one-liners that fill an entire page. A tree died for this. Hi guys.
Well, hello. What a pleasure.
Anyway, this is going to be a long video. So, on my last video, where I reviewed Homebody by Rupi Kaur, somebody actually requested that I review the poetry book September Love by Lang Leav that came out in 2020. And I was intrigued. To be honest, this person didn't specify if they intended for me to do a rant review or like if they actually liked this poetry and were recommending it to me. But so I went into this not knowing anything. I had never read anything by this writer before, so I had no idea what to expect. And yeah, it was something. Let's get this out of the way. To be honest, I didn't hate this poetry book. I feel like I criticize way too soon as it is, so I'm always trying to keep an open mind and be like, well, I'm sure there's something I like about it. I don't know if that's very positive as well, but anyway, so initially I rated it 2.5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, which looking back on, I did actually change it to 2 stars. And now that I think about it more and more, I actually think that was still too nice. Listen, okay, I started reading this poetry book. And like, I didn't hate it. I was kind of into some of the first poems. Like, they at least were trying something. I had kind of the same experience like with Homebody. Like, it wasn't like milk and honey. I didn't hate it. It wasn't like just Instagram poetry, but it was mostly Instagram poetry. When I started reading September Love, the first thing that comes up is there was a preface written by Lily Reinhardt from Riverdale. And she was like saying how this is like such a great poetry book. It really inspired her. Like, some people know Lily Reinhardt also came out with her own poetry book, which I'm kind of concerned about now. Yeah, it was just your typical, yeah, this poetry book changed my life. It was so incredible and stuff. And you know, that kind of made me scared, to be honest. Not to judge Lily Reinhardt, obviously, I don't know her, I only saw her on Riverdale, which, yeah. But anyway, that was like my introduction, and I was like, I think we're in for a treat. First things first that I want to say about this poetry book, apparently it came out in November of 2020, somewhere around November. And that's really shocking to me. Because, I mean, when you look at the entire book, it's pretty much just Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter poetry, you know? Like your typical internet, whatever. Like, my face says it all already. Like, it's typical Rupi Kaur poetry. Everyone's trying to be Rupi Kaur now. Or maybe she tried to be other people, I don't fucking know. How is this still getting published? That's my concern. That was my concern, because it read like something that we've literally already read like 1,000,000 times. How is this still getting published? What's going on? Who's in on this? Who's buying this? Anyway, well, Lily Reinhardt is apparently. So going to get cancelled by her. Let's just jump right into everything that I've written down about this poetry book. Also the title, September Love, like I already had a hunch, you know, that I was in for something wonderful, wonderfully cringy. So the beginning, like I said, the first couple of poems weren't that bad, to be honest. I wrote down there was some interesting visual storytelling going on at the beginning, which sadly kind of started to dwindle and completely disappear the further I read. And I also wrote down, if I have to read the word love one more time. I'm going to commit a crime. Like, I know it's called September Love. Just because it's a poetry book about love doesn't mean that you have to write the word love in every freaking poem. Why am I saying freaking? In every fucking poem. If you took a shot every time you read the word love, you would die of alcohol poisoning. After I read this poetry book, obviously I went on to Goodreads, not just to review it, but also I like to read other people's thoughts and compare them to my own. And the description, just overall the description about this poetry book, it stated, this poetry book is breaking the rules and is challenging perceptions. Which is like the dumb... Who writes these, like... Who writes this shit? Like, you can say a lot about this type of poetry, but it in no way does it break the rules or challenge any perceptions. It's just the same old crap we've been reading for like 5 years, ever since Instagram became a thing, I guess. Yeah, I wrote down that this is just the trend right now. It's just selling feminism. This isn't feminist, this isn't self-empowering, it's just selling me it's trying to sell me a product. It's like, oh, you're a feminist, here, have some crappy poems that have barely anything to say. Here, give me money. This is just my problem with like feminist literature these days. It's just, don't give me wishy-washy bullshit that's not about anything. A lot of these poets also, you can literally just take random poems out of their poetry books and just like line them up and you won't even know who wrote it. So like I said in the beginning, I didn't really hate all the poems in this. I thought some were making an attempt at some kind of metaphor or allegory or like some kind of storytelling. But then I slowly became kind of annoyed and pissed off because there were some really weird things going on in this. Also, my problem with all of these poetry books is also they're so fucking long for a poetry book. And I know that may be weird to some people, but me as someone who is actually also like, who writes poetry in their free time, I don't know. I'm always like, I open these books and they're like 90 pages and I'm like, 90 pages? Is that like about... Some poems are longer than other poems, obviously, but like 90 poems? Like even like 50 poems, I'm like, oh god, that's a lot. That's a lot to put out there in just one book, you know? And most of these, they just pop them out every year or so, and so like you have to keep coming up with so much poetry. But obviously you get like stuff like the random one-liners that fill an entire page and you're like, a tree died for this. A poor fucking tree died for this, you know? Like some random one-liner that you would find on your like tearaway calendar that's, have a good day. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. And then she also did something really weird. She gave these random how to write teachings. We'll get to that. I have an example. I think I have an example of those. But like random how to write teachings. I thought this was about love. I thought this was a poetry book about love. All of a sudden, she's like trying to tell me what it's like to be a writer. What it's like to write poems. All hell. It became like a self-help book for writing. And I was like, the fuck is going on? So for me personally, it just felt like she ran out of material to fill this 90-page poetry book or whatever. And they were mostly also just generic advice like, be yourself. And then there was another one, we'll get to that one in particular, that really took me by surprise. She was randomly also calling out people in this poetry book that's supposed to be about love, which is also like kind of a bit counterproductive, but okay. Yeah, she was either like calling out some random guy that had like nothing to do with anything. Or she was also, several times she also called out critics, which, I mean, guys, like, that just adds to the whole like Twitter analogy of this poetry book. It just makes it sound like a Twitter fight you're having over criticism of your poetry book. Like, who the fuck cares these days? I never get these people. Like, I know I'm some idiot ranting in my room alone to a camera, but like, I don't have a best-selling poetry book. What the fuck am I doing with my life? Nothing. So, but these people, they literally are like successful. Shouldn't they be doing something more valuable with their time instead of like having Twitter arguments and then putting them in their poetry book? I don't know, this was so fucking random. It was kind of funny. It was kind of entertaining, to be honest. It was probably the most entertaining thing in this book. Yeah, I didn't know what to say about this. I was comparing it to Rupi Kaur because obviously it's the same thing. But I was like, at least Rupi Kaur was like, in Homebody at least, not in her earlier work, she was doing something, she was like trying to make it more raw, more real, more personal, which I don't know if that's also not in particular my thing, but at least she was trying, you know. She was, with this, it was just so wishy-washy and weird. I don't know. I just hated both. Yeah, I don't know. But let's get into what you're really here for, which are the examples I have. Oh, the example. So, on page 19 of this poetry book, September Love, is a poem called Why I Write. Because all of a sudden she's also telling us why she writes. Also, I know why I found this funny. So she starts with, I write without knowing whom my words will find, without thinking further than the next line. And then it goes on, no one cares. But that in particular was kind of weird to me because it suggests that she's like writing for herself, which also again, like, okay, yeah, generic. What are you trying to say? You write for yourself, good for you. No, but anyway, she tries to make it seem like she writes for herself and she isn't aware of her audience or anything, which, like I'm saying, all of these poetry books are like selling feminism. They're like using these vague feminist-esque statements to sell you this product. So she's very aware of the audience that she has. She's very aware of what she needs to write to get like this stuff published. So please don't try and make it seem like you don't know, like you're writing for yourself or something. At this point, you're not. Like, I believe she has like several other books published by now, so she knows who her audience is and what she needs to write, like the wishy-washy stuff she needs to write to appeal to them. The next one is called A Life Unlived. And that's again one of those really short ones that killed trees for nothing. Someone is also like literally sawing down trees outside as I'm filming this video, so that's ironic, to say the least. Anyway, we reminisce so much about the past that it becomes like a second shadow. We dream so much about the future that we are hardly present. We talk so much about our lives, we forget to live. I've seen this statement on Tumblr before, I swear to God. Another one is called Crystal Ball. When I look back on my life, it is so easy to see how every decision could have led me elsewhere. And if only I'd had the gift of hindsight, I could have changed it for the better. But how could I have known that crystal balls are just a skewed reflection of our present? So now I'm standing here, wondering what direction I should go in. Looking for what I'm not seeing. This is like something you write in your journal for the day, like, Dear Diary, I don't know what to do with my life. Life is like a crystal ball. You look into it, and you just see your own reflection. I don't fucking... Oh my god. Why does this remind me of like the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, when Ron and Harry had to look into the crystal ball and they just didn't see shit. And then they had to make up stuff to pass their exams and stuff. Oh, good times, good times. Oh, the next one is one of those famous one-liners that I talked about. And it's called, it even has a title. It's literally one line and has a title. Why? What's the point? It's called For a Man. Because of course it is. My absolute love and adoration for a man can live in peace with my feminism. What does that even mean? Okay, anyway. A tree died for this. The next one I actually kind of liked, but it's also kind of cringy. But I like cringy shit sometimes. Anyway, it's called Endless Thirst. You are at once a sea full of salt water, and the endless thirst scratching the back of my throat. You know, that would be kind of a hot line if it was like in a novel or something about love. But it's just like one random sentence that you pen down. You're like, when you're in a cafe or something and you're bored or you're waiting for your coffee, you're like, oh yeah, you're like, the salt water scratching my throat. I have to write that down. But then you actually have to like use it for something, like to write an entire poem or a novel or something. No, you just put it like as a one-liner to kill the trees for nothing. Okay, anyway. Oh god, this is one of those where she criticizes the critics, you know? And it's called The Golden Rule. Because of course it is. Oh, I'm very bitchy today, I'm sorry, I literally couldn't give a fuck. Something I wish I had known from the beginning. Oh god. If you are criticized for your writing, it means you are creating work of note. When you find yourself in a place where strangers are talking about you, keep creating the work that got you noticed. Do not alter your writing to appease your critics. It is natural to crave validation, especially from those who will never get it. Never give it. To be a successful writer, you must ignore this instinct. This is the most critical lesson I have learned. Even my camera is like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. Anyway, blah blah blah, she talked on. You can't please everyone, so don't even try. This rule applies in life, in love, and especially in writing. This is one of those writing tips / criticizing the critics. Yeah, if you enjoy what you're doing, obviously keep doing it. That's just like constructive criticism is still important. Someone can give you criticism who knows more about this stuff than you, someone who has more experience, even someone who's maybe like standing further away from it, you know, to have a different perspective. But they can still give me some insight on what I'm doing well or what I'm doing wrong. So it's just such a weird thing about not listening to, I mean, obviously this is a rant video, she shouldn't listen. No one should be listening to this for constructive criticism. Although, I do think that I make some points, some decent points. And another thing, why is this in your poetry book about September love? What does this have to do? Someone really hates me. Oh, this one. This one is a work of art, to be honest. It's called, brace yourselves, To the Guy Who Claims My Poetry Was the Cause of His Breakup. What? Do other people not cringe reading this? Because It is astonishing to think that my words have the power to make someone fall out of love with you. That I have somehow been conspiring against you, even though up until this moment I was blissfully unaware of your existence. Maybe you should ask yourself why she has found her self-worth in the words of others and not yours. Could it be perhaps that I'm not some grand puppet master like you believe, that my words are not a cold hard slap, but merely a soft tap on the shoulder, and the truth is, you're just a shitty boyfriend? This is just so cringy. Why is this in your poetry book? Listen, I love a shady bitch as much as the next, but because I am a shady bitch. But it's just so out of nowhere. It just comes out of nowhere, and like again, it sounds like this weird, angry tweet Maybe it should have been an angry tweet. It's just, it does not fit in here at all. But I'm very grateful that it is, because it's fucking hilarious. Anyway, we're gonna move on. Leave in the comment. Let me know in the comment if you didn't think this was cringy. I don't know. Oh, another criticizing the critics. It's called My Poetry. I really should stop with this voice, but I can't. They accuse me of never putting myself on a page. That I distance myself from my poetry like an old lover I have lived to regret. They say I'm dishonest, inauthentic, that I don't know heartbreak the way I write it. But there are other ways to tell my secrets, and I have many. Like apple seeds buried deep in my bones, cinnamon and cyanide, blood pacts and promises. There are so many versions of me splashed onto a page like a carnival of mirrors. I wanted you to know my poetry, but I never meant for you to know me. You know, I actually kind of like the like whole part about the apple seeds and the cinnamon and cyanide. Like, I like that part. I just wish it wasn't like about the critics accusing her, I guess, of being dishonest and inauthentic. Which, yeah, you're writing average Instagram poetry or like angry Twitter messages. Yeah, I like the cinnamon and cyanide, the blood pacts and promises. Like, I want to read more about that. What's that about? Like, tell me your secrets. What the fuck? That's what I want to read. That's what poetry is, like, supposed to be, I guess. Or like... But... don't have Twitter arguments in your poetry book. It's so silly. Written. When you have written all you had to write, there is nothing left to write about but yourself. Yes! Please, write about yourself. Don't give me this wishy-washy feminist product bullshit. I'm not going to buy it. Put that shit on clearance. I'm not going to buy it. So bad, but it feels so good. December. It is only the year that is ending, so why does it feel like the world is? I don't know, maybe because we live in a fucking pandemic and the world is literally all pretty much ending every day and we're all done. And yeah. Again, thank you for this random Tumblr statement. Thank you. I think that was it. Thank fuck. I wanted to end this video on a positive note because obviously people were also kind of questioning what kind of poetry I do like if I hate all of this. And I do have some examples of female writers whose poetry I really enjoy. There is a well-known Russian writer who's called Anna Akhmatova, and she also writes a lot about love and stuff and about relationships, but she does it in a more interesting way. I have a couple of examples of lines from her poetry, and you should just look it up for yourself because I highly recommend. So Anna Akhmatova, she writes, I knew the gods turned once in their madness, men into things, not killing humane senses. You've been turned into my reminiscences to make eternal the unearthly sadness. You've been turned into my reminiscences to make eternal the unearthly sadness. To make eternal the unearthly sadness. That's something to think about, you know? Another example. But listen, I am warning you, I'm living for the very last time. Not as a swallow, nor a maple. Not as a reed, nor as a star. Not as spring water, nor as the tall of bells. Will I return to trouble men, nor will I vex their dreams again with my insatiable moans. Like, you know, she also, Anna Akhmatova, she also like goes there. She also, like, it's more of like a feeling, this rawness that she tries to express, but it's still written very well. Like, this is poetry. It's every time you read it, you can visualize it, or you can interpret it in a different way, or you can like get this feeling. Yeah. Her poetry is like so magical and very much a story. Every poem she writes is very much like a little condensed story. It's so good. Another writer that I discovered recently is Kamala Das. Yeah, she was a major Indian English poet. She very much writes about the same themes as the previous people we talked about, but she does it again in a much more profound, interesting way. She's actually writing poetry, you know? I took some lines out of several different poems that I really liked. You should definitely look her up as well. Really good stuff. So she writes, "Don't write in English," they said. "English is not your mother tongue. Why not leave me alone, critics, friends, visiting cousins, every one of you? Why not let me speak in any language I like? The language I speak becomes mine. Its distortions, its queerness, all mine, mine alone." Again, this is a perfect example of her like talking about people who criticize her for writing in English, but it's completely something different than writing some vague like some angry Twitter statement about how the critics don't like your work. She's actually writing about kind of people like kind of being discriminative and saying that you shouldn't write in a foreign language because that's not your mother tongue. You're not good enough for this. It goes way much. It's a bigger issue that she's talking about. She takes a different language. She takes a language that's not her mother tongue, but she makes it her own. You know, her distortions become unique to her, and that's very interesting. I never even thought of it that way. She also writes, "Lights are moving on the shore, but I shall not return. See, toss my body back that he knew how to love. Take in my naked soul that he knew how to hurt. Only the soul knows how to sing at the vortex of the sea." This is just so, the way she writes about it is so like at the vortex of the sea. Yeah, I can visualize it. You can imagine what that feels like, being in a vortex. She also writes, "Her husband shut her in every morning, locked her in a room of books with a streak of sunshine lying near the door, like a yellow cat to keep her company. But soon winter came, and one day while locking her in, he noticed that the cat of sunshine was only a line, a half-thin line, and in the evening when he returned to take her out, she was a cold and half-dead woman, now of no use at all to men." Again, this is very raw, what she's talking about. This is very, like, a serious topic. But the way she uses this metaphor of the yellow cat and, like, being locked in, but it's not even that literal. It's more of like, it's an image, it's a story she's telling. And through the story, you get a sense of understanding of her situation, or like the situation of this woman, of any woman in the world. "Words are a nuisance, but they grow on me like leaves on a tree. They never seem to stop their coming from a silence somewhere deep within." Again, this is also, she writes about being a writer, about being a poet, like the words that come out of her, like leaves on a tree, like she can't stop it. It's just something that's part of her, that's growing. It's so beautiful. It's so yeah, Kamala Das and Anna Akhmatova, highly recommend. This is what I love. This is poetry to me. So thank you so much for the person who requested that I review September Love. Yeah, certainly like if you enjoy, or leave a comment, because it really helps me to know what kind of videos you enjoy watching. So thank you so much, and bye. I'll see you in my next video. A tree died for this.